This is the Acer Nitro Suckface Edition. Not many people know this, but that's actually the internal codename that Acer uses to refer to this bad boy. But anyway, I've done a bunch of videos on this pre-build, and I don't like it very much. I've reinstalled Windows on it several times, and it still behaves like it's the catalyst that's gonna start Skynet. So for the sake of the future of humanity, I'm gonna take a Dremel to this bad boy and turn it into a badass sleeper build. Oh, I almost forgot. I don't have a huge amount of plans as to how I want to mod this PC. The only thing I know is I'm gonna fit this Corsair H100i RGB Pro XT in here if it kills me. Corsair sent this AIO out for a video ages ago, and I still haven't used it. And it's just, no matter what I have to do to this PC, it's going in there. Now, as you can see, it's pretty tiny, but there is one great thing about it, is that this looks like it's a standard ATX power supply. So that's going to be really easy to replace. We do need to replace it because it has a bunch of proprietary connectors and stuff. So we're not going to be able to plug our non-Acer motherboard in. Now the next thing I want to do is get rid of this DVD drive because it's actually quite in the way of where the power supply cables plug into the motherboard, so I don't want to have to struggle underneath it. So let's see how we're going to get in there. As we know, the monobrow of this little PC lights up, and here is where it connects to the power supply. This looks like the front panel I/O connector for the power button. And then you've got another two running down there, and that's actually the Wi-Fi antenna cable that runs all the way through there and then attaches somewhere to the front. So what I'm going to do now is unplug all of those cables and see if we can actually pull this front panel off. Okay, so I've been able to get the front off. It does really feel like you're going to destroy it in the process, but you just kind of have to take it by the scruff of the neck and just go to town on it a little to get it off. One thing that's really cool is I'm easily going to be able to hook up the power button, so I'm pretty excited for that. But just look at that airflow. There is literally no space for airflow in the front. This front I/O is actually attached to the motherboard itself, so I'm going to have to remove that. We're not going to have access to that anymore. We're not going to have access to the DVD drive, but hopefully we're going to be able to fit the 240mm Corsair AIO in here. The DVD drive design is actually really interesting. So they've got this caddy so that you can attach extra hard drives. And then you have this clip which you push down. It's really hard to do with one hand, actually. Okay, so you push it down and then it slides out like that. There's also a little bit of paint on this clip so that they can see when you've actually removed it. What's also really interesting about this is on the back, it uses a normal SATA port for data, but it's got a weird proprietary power connector, which you can see here. It's actually adapted from a normal SATA power, and then you've got this little itty bitty one. What really blows my mind about this little PC is how they go out of their way to make it really difficult for the person who bought it to upgrade it. You can see here there's an M.2 slot, but it's tucked away under all of these cables and underneath this thing. So you need to remove this whole assembly to get to it, which I'm 100% sure will void your warranty. Again, with the power supply, they make it really difficult for you to get out. There's that clip in the back that you have to push down, and there's that little block on the top that you have to push up. So you kind of need 3 hands to get the power supply out. But we've got that clingy bugger out, so now let's get down to the motherboard. It's still stuck somewhere. Feels like it's stuck with the rear I/O. Am I missing a screw? So I found where they're hiding the last screw. It's under here. It's under the tape that they use to keep the Wi-Fi antenna down. That's very sneaky. I actually thought they may have hidden it under the actual Wi-Fi card, but I was kind of onto something with that. There we go. Okay, the front I/O is just stuck. There we go. What a weird looking motherboard. Now I've lined the AIO up more or less where I'd want it on the other side of the panel, and I'm kind of measuring. Bear in mind, I am a professional, so this is going to be kind of like Acer did it from the factory. But what I'm thinking here is if I remove this, I don't need to cut out this entire panel. It doesn't need to be an amazingly accurate job, because there's barely any front airflow in the plastic panel, even without this metal tray not there. So I'm just gonna cut a little bit out and then mount it. Because I kind of want to keep these two antennae here, because the motherboard I'm gonna use does have a Wi-Fi module, and it would be pretty cool to be able to use that. So I drew boobs on it as a joke, and then I realized that it's permanent marker and I couldn't get it off. So I added a nice smiley face so that the algorithm doesn't demonetize this video. Look at that! We've got a very professionally mounted AIO in the front. As you can see, I actually mounted the AIO upside down in here with the tubes going up from the bottom, because I wanted to give the power supply as much space as possible. However, this isn't really final because the graphics card needs to sit down there and there may be a bit of a battle for space over there. I do have a very small graphics card that I'm going to be using, which is my RTX 2060, but there may still be a bit of an issue. So what I'm going to do is a bit of a test fit to see how all of that kind of fits in there. But before we do that, let's put the front plastic on in the top so that it looks more like a Nitro 50 and not just a kind of gray box. Okay, and then and just like that, it looks way better. I didn't have to do much modification other than cut down 2 little plastic bits to get it to fit on there. But that looks pretty good. So now I'm gonna put in the power supply and see what kind of clearance we have and compare it to the 2060 in the bottom there. Look at that! It's starting to look really good in here. I ended up having to use a non-modular power supply because the modular power supplies I had were just a little bit too big to fit in there. And this, I think it's a 500 BR, is the exact same size as the power supply that comes with the PC, so it fits perfectly. Luckily, there's a huge hole to stuff cables in over there. The only real problem I have is that cable over there is the actual power button, and it's just a little bit too short to reach over there. So I'm gonna have to find an adapter somewhere to be able to plug that in. This has been the easiest easiest PC modding experience I've ever had. Normally, when I try and fit stuff in a thing where it doesn't belong, it's basically 3 days of my own personal hell that ends with me just going, "Ah, ah," and then it's finished. Whereas this one has been so easy. The most irritating thing about this entire build is that damn power button cable that's like, it's a hobbit's pinky away from reaching, so now I have to jumpstart the PC like it's a car in 1917. But that's okay, it works. We've got all of the stuff in there, and it looks pretty badass. There's still very little airflow for that front radiator, so I don't have particularly high hopes for the temperatures with that. Yeah, let's actually have a look at the temperatures and see how it went after running half an hour of IDA64 on the CPU and Furmark on the GPU. Now, as you can see here, the CPU is doing very well. That Corsair H100 is just doing its work, but the graphics card was struggling. That is the highest temperatures I've ever recorded on that card. And I've used it in a bunch of weird configurations. I've used it in IKEA drawers, in other ITX builds, and yeah, it's never been that hot before, so that's not ideal. In regards to the motherboard VRM, it was getting Louisiana bio level hot. It was hitting 100 degrees C and then throttling, so I actually just ended up stopping the testing because I didn't want to set fire to the little motherboard. So with that, let's have a look at the gaming performance difference between the previous loser face suck edition of the Acer and the Dawid improved super mega version. That was clearly a very unfair test. Comparing a GTX 1650 to an RTX 2060 is a little bit like racing a Prius against an Audi RS6. It's not going to go very well for the Prius. And that brings me to the end of my journey with the little loser Acer Nitro Suckface edition. And I'm actually pretty sad because now that I've cut it up a bit, I'm not going to be able to reassemble it the way that it was before. And I'm not going to keep these components in here because why would I do that? Why would I run the setup in this case if I could run it in like an NZXT H1, which is the PC case equivalent of Ashton Kutcher? It's a real fine cutlet. Whereas this Acer Nitro 50 case is a little bit like Starbirds from Community. It's a very plain looking dude with some star-shaped sideburns on it. So anyway, with that, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go check out my stream later today while I try and talk over an ambulance driving by. And thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel, and until the next video, bye-bye.